I found the birth control pills in my sister-in-law's room, hidden away while she played the part of the perfect, virtuous wife. It was the day of the memorial for her late mother-in-law. Without a second thought, I secretly swapped the pills for something else. That night, my father-in-law's agonized screams shattered the silence, exposing the vile secret they had desperately tried to bury. What exactly happened? And how could one small bottle of pills bring a powerful, respected family to ruin overnight? It was the 3rd anniversary of my mother-in-law's passing. The family's 3-story estate, nestled in an affluent suburb outside the city, was shrouded in an atmosphere that was both grand and suffocating. The cloying scent of memorial lilies mixed with the aroma of rich food wafting from the kitchen, making the already heavy air feel even more oppressive. As the wife of the younger son, I had been up since 4 in the morning, preparing everything: an elaborate multi-course meal with over a dozen dishes, a perfectly roasted whole sea bass, 3 different kinds of meticulously crafted hors d'oeuvres, and complex skewers that took hours to assemble. Everything had to pass through my hands. My arms ached as if they were about to break off. My back was screaming in protest, and my old t-shirt was soaked with sweat, but I couldn't dare utter a single word of complaint. I knew my place in this house all too well. In the 6 years since I'd married my husband, Mason, I had given the Kim family 2 daughters, Lily and Emma. The girls were beautiful and kind, but in the eyes of my in-laws, they were just temporary members of the family, destined to leave one day. What this family truly craved, what my father-in-law, Kenneth, preached at every meal, was a male heir to carry on the family name and legacy. And because I had only given birth to daughters, every fault and failing in this household became my burden to bear. My silence was mistaken for obedience, my diligence for duty. It seemed the very existence of my daughters and me was a constant, glaring reminder of their disappointment. In stark contrast, my sister-in-law, Julia, was showered with affection. She had married Mason's older brother, Marcus, a year before I did, but they were still childless. Despite this, the entire family treated her like a precious treasure. Everyone said it was because she had a delicate constitution that made pregnancy difficult, and that Marcus, as the eldest son, just needed to try harder. Every month, Kenneth would spend a fortune on expensive, custom-blended herbal tonics and exclusive supplements, brewing them himself in the hopes that Julia would conceive. Julia never lifted a finger to help with household chores. Even on a significant day like this, while I scrambled in the kitchen, she sat on the living room sofa, fanning herself and occasionally frowning about how tired she was. The moment my husband, Mason, saw her, he rushed over. "Julia, are you not feeling well again? Should I have Serena bring you some ginseng tea?" Serena. That's my name. In this house, I often felt like I didn't have one. I was just a role, a tool. My husband's voice made my heart sink and a lump form in my throat. He was my husband, the father of my children, but in front of his family, he always belittled me to stay in their good graces. Wordlessly, I poured hot ginseng tea into a cup and carefully carried it upstairs. Julia was resting her head on her husband Marcus's shoulder, her expression weary, but her eyes held a strange, satisfied gleam. When she saw me, she wrinkled her nose. "Oh, Serena, you must have come straight from the kitchen. The smell of grease is so strong, it's making me feel a little nauseous." I froze on the spot. The teacup in my hands trembled like a leaf in the wind. I had washed up thoroughly before coming upstairs, but even that couldn't spare me from her contempt. Kenneth, who was sitting nearby in an ornate armchair, cleared his throat and threw a single, ice-cold sentence at me. "Can't even produce an heir, and now she's making everyone uncomfortable, utterly useless." Each word was a dagger twisting in my heart. I bit my lip until I could taste the metallic tang of blood, forcing back the tears that threatened to spill. Without looking at anyone, I placed the cup on the table and spoke in a voice that was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I'll go back to the kitchen right now." As I turned to leave, I heard Julia's sickeningly sweet voice behind me. "Dad, don't be so hard on her. I'm sure Serena didn't mean it. It's just me being overly sensitive." Her hypocrisy made me want to vomit. I rushed back to the kitchen, slammed the door shut, and leaned against the wall, gasping for air. I couldn't take it anymore. For 6 long years, I had lived like a shadow in this house, burdened with the crime of not bearing a son. Meanwhile, the one who should have been under the most pressure was living a life of leisure, showered with every privilege. I used to think this was my fate, that being a daughter-in-law in a family like this meant I had to endure, but today, my endurance had reached its breaking point. Just then, my husband came downstairs. He looked at me with an apologetic expression. "Serena, don't take what Dad said to heart. He's just desperate for a grandson, and try to understand Julia, too. She's under a lot of stress." I looked up at him, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Stress? Having the whole family wait on her hand and foot, feeding her every expensive supplement under the sun, that's stress? What about me, Mason? Have you ever once considered the stress I'm under? Mason avoided my gaze. "Oh, come on, let it go. It's all in the past." He quickly changed the subject. "Julia has a bit of a headache. Could you go get the lavender silk scarf from the nightstand drawer in her room? I have to go pick up some of the older relatives." He left in a hurry, as if he couldn't stand to be in the same room with me for another second. Standing in the kitchen, I felt my heart grow cold. Even my own husband took it for granted that I was Julia's servant. With a deep sigh, I suppressed my chaotic emotions and headed to Marcus and Julia's bedroom. The room, twice the size of ours, was lavishly decorated with expensive furniture. A faint mix of herbal tonics and high-end perfume hung in the air. I carefully opened the nightstand drawer. The lavender silk scarf was neatly folded right on top. As I reached for it, my elbow bumped a small makeup pouch next to it. It fell to the floor, its contents spilling across the rug: lipstick, a powder compact, and a small white plastic case. I bent down to pick it up, and in that instant, my world fell apart. It was a monthly pack of oral contraceptives. 28 pills. More than half of them were already gone. I stood there, clutching the case, my body trembling. It wasn't from fear. It was from the uncontrollable rage boiling up inside me. So that was it. The pitiful act of being unable to conceive, the constant complaints of fatigue, the pressure she supposedly felt, it was all a performance, a flawless 6-year-long act. Julia never wanted a child. For years, she had deceived this entire family and made me the scapegoat. All the scorn, the blame, the unjust treatment I had endured, it all stemmed from this woman's selfishness and lies. I gripped the pill case so tightly my knuckles turned white. A bold, dangerous idea flashed through my mind. I wouldn't expose her now. That would be too easy. I would make her pay for everything she had done to me, in a way she could never possibly imagine. Suddenly, I remembered a small bottle Mason kept in his drawer, a gift from his friend Frank. A potent male enhancement supplement, Frank had said, for when he needed it. Mason had never touched it. I quietly put the birth control case back in the pouch, placed the scarf on the bed, and slipped out of the room. My heart pounded against my ribs as I walked to my own room. This charade. It was my turn to bring down the curtain. Back in my room, I locked the door. My heart was still hammering in my chest. Julia's birth control case felt cold in my hand, yet it held a heat that could burn everything to the ground. It was no longer just medication. It was proof of my 6 years of suffering, the physical manifestation of every insult I had endured and every night I had cried myself to sleep. I had often cursed the heavens for being so unfair, for giving me such a cruel family and an ineffectual husband. But maybe it wasn't that the heavens were unfair. Maybe they were giving me a chance to reclaim justice for myself, and that chance was right now. I carefully opened Mason's drawer. Beneath a few old shirts was a small, dark brown glass bottle with no label. This was my secret weapon. Mason's friend, drunk one night, had pressed it into his hand, boasting it was a direct import, and its effects were instantaneous. My cautious, prideful husband had never dared to use it, once telling me, "Something could go terribly wrong if you take that stuff." But the very thing that could go terribly wrong had just become my ace in the hole. Using a pair of small tweezers, I carefully removed each of Julia's remaining birth control pills. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a surging mix of fury and exhilaration. With each pill I took out, a memory of injustice flashed before my eyes. The first pill. When my first daughter, Lily, was born. My mother-in-law, who was still alive then, glanced at her granddaughter, sighed, and said, "Another girl. Just one more mouth to feed before she leaves us." The second pill, when Julia bought a designer handbag and my father-in-law praised her impeccable taste, saying she was elevating the family's status. But when I wore a new blouse I'd bought at a department store, he'd sneered, "You get what you pay for. Looks cheap." The third, fourth, fifth pills, the countless dinners I ate alone in the kitchen, the endless stream of backhanded comments, the looks of disdain from the entire family. They had made me a sinner for the simple crime of not producing a son, while the real culprit was upstairs, playing the part of a devoted daughter-in-law, pretending she desperately wanted a child. After removing all the pills, I used a small craft knife to scrape a bit of powder from the supplement in the brown bottle. I didn't use much. I only needed a tiny amount, just enough to cause a few unintended side effects. I carefully filled the empty slots in the blister pack with the powder and resealed it with a thin piece of foil, making it look as close to the original as possible. Once everything was done, I placed the doctored pill case back in Julia's makeup pouch and put everything back where I had found it. I left no trace. I accomplished it all in an eerie silence, barely daring to breathe. It felt like walking a tightrope. One small mistake could send me plunging into the abyss, but there was no turning back now. They had pushed me to this dead end. They had no right to blame me for becoming this cruel. I took the silk scarf up to the living room and handed it to Julia. In a still faint voice, she accepted it. "Thank you, Serena. You're such a good person. Not like me, being no help to the family at all." I offered a slight smile, its hidden meaning lost on everyone. "Don't say that, Julia. You should rest. I'll take care of everything else." For the rest of the afternoon I remained the diligent, younger daughter-in-law. I silently cleared the memorial table, washed a mountain of dishes, and polished the house until it gleamed. Not a single person asked if I was tired or offered to help. They considered it my duty. Even Mason, after dropping off the relatives, just sat in the living room watching TV, occasionally glancing toward the kitchen to see if I was finished. Dinner began with its usual heavy atmosphere. Kenneth started his sermon about needing a grandson. "The Kim family line has been passed down through the firstborn son for 3 generations. It's going to end with Marcus and Mason. How can I rest in peace?" He shot me a look of open condemnation. I pretended not to hear and focused on my food. Julia, ever the perfect actress, played her part flawlessly. She placed a piece of fish on his plate and cooed. "Don't worry, Dad. We're really trying. I guess the timing just isn't right yet." I almost choked back a laugh watching her performance. Trying, right, trying to remember to take her birth control pill every day. That night, after cleaning up, I went up to my room. My daughters were already sound asleep. Looking at their innocent faces, a pang of sadness hit me. It was for them, for Lily and Emma, that I had to be stronger. I couldn't let them grow up in an environment where their mother was ignored and trampled on. I couldn't let them live their lives feeling inferior just because they were girls. I tucked them in and sat quietly by the window, staring out at the dark yard. A night breeze carried a chill. I knew a storm was about to break over this house. I didn't know what the consequences would be or what I would have to face, but I had no regrets. What I had planted tonight wasn't just a bit of powder. It was a spark that would burn away all the lies. And ironically, the person who had first provided that spark was my own husband. The next morning, everything seemed to proceed as usual. I was the first one up, preparing breakfast for the family. Kenneth sat at the table, reading the Wall Street Journal with a stern expression. Mason quickly ate a few bites and left for work. There was only one thing out of the ordinary: Julia. She came downstairs looking unusually radiant. Dressed in a blush pink silk dress, with light makeup on, she had a faint smile playing on her lips. The weary, tired look she usually wore was gone. She even greeted me cheerfully. "Good morning, Serena. What did you make? It smells delicious." I was a bit taken aback, but answered politely, "I made some beef and vegetable soup. I hope you like it." She sat down and ate heartily, even helping herself to a second sausage patty, something she normally avoided, calling it too greasy. Kenneth was clearly pleased to see this. He looked at her with renewed hope. "Julia, you look very well today. Is that special tonic I bought for you finally working?" Julia smiled, glanced at Marcus, and replied, "Yes, Dad. I think that's part of it. But I think peace of mind is the most important thing. And Marcus and I have been closer lately." Her face suddenly flushed. Marcus, sitting beside her, looked a bit flustered. He cleared his throat and quickly passed her a dish. Watching this unfold, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It seemed my little tonic was starting to take effect. I barely managed to suppress a smirk and quietly lowered my head to eat. My mind was a chaotic mix of worry, triumph, and curiosity about what would happen next. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, one that risked not only my own safety but my children's future. After breakfast, Julia pulled me aside and whispered, "Serena, you worked so hard preparing for the memorial yesterday. I'm sorry I couldn't help. As a thank you, how about we go shopping this afternoon?" My treat. I was stunned. In 6 years, this was the first time she had ever invited me to go anywhere with her. Until now, she had either ignored me or barked orders at me. This sudden change made me suspicious. Was this another one of her traps? Or was she genuinely in a good mood? After a moment's hesitation, I nodded. I wanted to see what she was up to. That afternoon, Julia took me to the most luxurious shopping mall in the city. She breezed from one high-end boutique to another, shopping without a hint of restraint. She bought several designer dresses for herself, an expensive handbag, and a set of premium cosmetics. Then, she turned to me and announced grandly, "Serena, pick out whatever you like. It's on me today." I was surprised but chose only a simple blouse. I wanted nothing from her. While I was in the fitting room, Julia sat outside, texting someone and smiling to herself. Her expression was unfamiliar, a mix of the bashful look of a girl newly in love and the smug satisfaction of someone who held a winning hand. Seeing that, a seed of doubt began to sprout in my mind. Something was off. Her transformation was too abrupt. She didn't look like a woman trying to conceive. She looked like someone deeply involved in a secret affair. Suddenly, I remembered all the times she'd taken clandestine calls in her room, the times she'd lied about meeting friends, only to return late with a strange expression. I had always dismissed it as her being eccentric, but connecting the dots now, I realized her secret might be bigger than just the birth control pills. As I was lost in thought, I overheard 2 sales associates, Ashley and Brittany, talking nearby. They were whispering, occasionally glancing in Julia's direction. "Hey, that woman in the pink dress. Doesn't she look familiar? Isn't that Marcus Kim's wife, the VP at Kim Global?" "Oh yeah, I think you're right. I've seen her around lately with some older, heavy-set guy. They say he's a big-shot partner at the company or something. They looked awfully cozy. Wonder what's going on there. Not our business. But man, she's got it made. Doted on by her husband and some other rich guy on the side." Their words hit me like a thunderclap. I stood frozen in the fitting room, the blood draining from my face. Marcus Kim, the VP that was her husband, an older, heavy-set guy, a major partner. Could it be? Was Julia not only deceiving her in-laws but also cheating on her husband? A secret on top of a secret, a more horrific truth beneath the surface. My head spun, axe setted. The woman I had thought was merely selfish and deceitful was, in fact, something far more terrifying. She wasn't just a fox, she was a viper disguised as a gentle lamb. I stepped out of the fitting room, trying my best to maintain a calm expression. As I looked at Julia, still engrossed in her phone, my plan for revenge began to shift in a new direction, one far more brutal and unpredictable than I had ever imagined. The drug I had swapped would likely do more than just expose her lies about wanting a child. It might just be the detonator for a much larger bomb, one that could destroy not only her, but the hollow honor of this entire family. My suspicions solidified into a chilling theory. The man they were talking about had to be Patrick, my father-in-law's longtime business partner. He was in his late 50s, heavyset, and always impeccably dressed. He often came to our house for dinner and business discussions with Kenneth and Marcus. He always brought expensive gifts and lavished Julia with syrupy compliments. "Julia, you are simply radiant. No wonder our Marcus is so smitten." "Kenneth, you are blessed to have such a daughter-in-law. I'd always thought it was just business flattery, but now I saw it differently." The way Patrick looked at Julia wasn't how an older man looks at his friend's daughter-in-law. It was a look of greed, of possession, and Julia, while feigning shyness, couldn't hide the smug triumph in her eyes. If her lover was Patrick, this was far more complicated. He wasn't just a business partner, he was one of Kenneth's closest friends. Their business dealings were intertwined with major contracts that kept the family company afloat. If this scandal broke, it wouldn't just be a family drama, it would be a corporate crisis. It could bankrupt them. That must have been why Julia was so confident. She knew she held a trump card that gave her control over the entire family. She didn't need to produce an heir or be a good wife. She had a more powerful weapon, her relationship with the man who held the company's financial lifeline in his hands. A shiver went down my spine. Her scheme was far more elaborate than I could have imagined. She had turned her marriage into a high-stakes game where her husband, Marcus, was a mere pawn, and my children and I were sacrifices to cover her dirty tracks. The more I thought about it, the more my rage grew. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to do something, not just for myself, but for all the innocent people she was using. But I had no concrete proof. It was all speculation. If I said anything now, no one would believe me. They would accuse me of spreading malicious rumors out of jealousy. I needed a perfect plan, a single, decisive blow that she could never deflect. And once again, I thought of that little brown bottle. It might just be the key to everything. I had to create a situation where Julia's secret would be exposed in the most natural, undeniable way possible. I began to formulate a meticulous plan in my mind. I had to be patient and wait for the right moment. And it seemed that moment was not far off. That evening at dinner, my father-in-law announced cheerfully, "Patrick is coming over for dinner next week. He just closed a massive deal and wants to celebrate with the family. Everyone, make sure we prepare to welcome him properly. Julia, I expect you to show off your skills and prepare a few special dishes for our honored guest." I felt my heart pound. This was it. This was my chance. That dinner wouldn't be a celebration. It would be the final stage for Julia's play, and I would be the director of its spectacular finale. I glanced at Julia. She was smiling brightly, her eyes sparkling with an unusual intensity. She was no doubt thrilled at the thought of seeing her lover, completely unaware that a perfect trap was waiting for her. I smiled back, a secret smile of my own. In this chess game, it was my turn to make the final, decisive move. The week passed in a tense, quiet anticipation. I remained the meek, submissive daughter-in-law, going about my duties without a word. But inside me, a storm was brewing. I spent the week observing every detail of my family members' routines, especially Julia's. I noted that every afternoon, after drinking the herbal tonic Kenneth prepared for her, she would rest in her room for about an hour. That was my window. Finally, the day of Patrick's visit arrived. It was a beautiful weekend afternoon. The family was buzzing with excitement. Kenneth, dressed in a sharp suit, paced the living room, hurrying everyone along. Marcus and Mason helped set the table, and Julia, of course, was the star of the show. She wore a figure-hugging, wine-red dress, her makeup heavier than usual. Her red lips and flirtatious gaze were overtly seductive. No one would ever guess she was a woman who supposedly had trouble conceiving. I was in charge of the kitchen, as always, but today I felt no resentment. A strange excitement coursed through me. Every dish I made, every plate I set, was part of my plan. I deliberately prepared bold, spicy, and stimulating foods, and I brought out a special bottle of herbal liquor that Kenneth adored, a potent blend said to be good for vitality. I knew Patrick was also a drinker and wouldn't refuse Kenneth's offer. Around 6 p.m., Patrick arrived, as heavyset and slick as I remembered, a gold watch flashing on his wrist. "Kenneth, my friend?" he boomed, his eyes, however, immediately locking onto Julia, who stood demurely beside Marcus. "And Julia, you look absolutely stunning tonight." Julia blushed and smiled. "Patrick, you're too kind." Dinner began in a lively atmosphere. Toasts were made to Patrick's success. Kenneth kept pouring him drinks, and Patrick eagerly accepted, downing glass after glass. Julia sat beside him, occasionally placing food on his plate. Their eyes met from time to time, exchanging messages only they could understand. Marcus and Mason, oblivious, chatted happily about business, completely missing the strange current in the air. I sat at the end of the table, quietly observing, barely sipping my wine. I had to keep a clear head. When the party was in full swing and everyone was tipsy, I knew my moment had come. Excusing myself to check on my daughters, I slipped upstairs. Instead of going to my room, I went to Julia's. The door was unlocked. The room was empty, filled with the scent of perfume and herbs. I moved quickly to her dressing table. There sat the bowl of her daily tonic, half finished. From my pocket, I took one of the supplement capsules from the brown bottle, crushed the contents into a fine powder, and poured it all into the bowl. I stirred it with a small spoon until it completely dissolved. Then I put everything back as it was. The entire operation took less than a minute. Before leaving, I discreetly hid my phone in a corner of the room, aimed at the bed, and hit record. I wanted every moment documented. This would be the irrefutable proof of her sins. I returned to the party with a serene expression, as if nothing had happened. About 10 minutes later, Julia announced she was feeling tired and was going up to rest. "Yes, go on," Kenneth urged, concerned. "Finish your tonic and get some rest. That stuff is very good for you." Julia smiled. "I know, Dad." She went upstairs, unaware that what awaited her was not sweet slumber but a living nightmare. The party continued, but my mind was elsewhere. I was waiting for the scream that would expose everything. My plan was perfect. But I never imagined that an unforeseen variable would arise, one that would twist everything into a situation far more dramatic and horrifying than I could have ever conceived. Time crawled by. Downstairs, the laughter and toasts continued. But to me, it was just background noise to the terrifying silence from upstairs. I sat rigid, my hands clenched under the table. A cold sweat trickled down my forehead, and my heart was pounding so hard I was afraid the person next to me could hear it. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Still nothing. The prolonged silence made me anxious. Was the dose too small? Did she suspect something and not drink the tonic? 1,000 questions swirled in my head, making it hard to breathe. Just as I began to despair, the unexpected happened. Kenneth, having had several more glasses of the herbal liquor, suddenly staggered to his feet. "Whoa, I'm feeling a bit warm. That liquor must be stronger than I thought. I think I need to go lie down. You all carry on." A tipsy Patrick tried to stop him. "Kenneth, don't go yet. The night is young." But my father-in-law waved him off. "No, I'm not feeling well. Getting old, you know." He turned to his sons. "Marcus, Mason, you take care of our guest." With that, he stumbled toward the stairs. A dreadful premonition seized me as I watched him go. He was going upstairs? To the same floor where Julia was alone? No, it couldn't be. I tried to dismiss the insane thought. He was surely going to his own room. But then, a small detail I had never consciously registered before shattered my assumption. My father-in-law's master suite was at the end of the hall. To the left, Marcus and Julia's room was at the top of the stairs. To the right, and I watched, frozen, as Kenneth turned right. My entire body went numb. A truth so monstrous I had never dared to imagine it was unfolding before my eyes. Could it be? Was Julia's secret lover not Patrick, but my own father-in-law? The thought was so repulsive, so unthinkable, I couldn't believe it myself. Kenneth, the man who constantly preached about morality and family honor, how could he commit such a depraved, incestuous act? And Julia, his own daughter-in-law, how could she? I tried to calm myself. I must have seen it wrong. He was drunk. He just mistook the room. But a woman's intuition screamed at me that something terrible was happening upstairs. I couldn't just sit there. I had to know. Making an excuse about needing the restroom, I slipped away from the table. I crept up the stairs, silent as a cat. As I neared Julia's room, I heard strange sounds. Not screams, but moans, heavy breathing, and the hushed whispers of a man and a woman. "Julia, you're incredible." "Shh, Dad, be quiet. What if someone hears?" My stomach churned. My head spun. It was them. It was unmistakably Kenneth and Julia. The truth was far more grotesque than my worst fears. This wasn't just an affair. They were carrying on their filthy acts right here in this house, on the anniversary of my mother-in-law's death. Nausea rose in my throat. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from being sick. Rage, disgust, contempt, a tidal wave of emotions threatened to drive me mad. And then, just as I'd anticipated, the effects of the drug kicked in. The moans from inside the room grew louder, more frantic, and finally, my father-in-law's blood-curdling scream ripped through the night. "Egg! Help me!" My chest, my heart. It was followed by Julia's own terrified shriek. "Dad! Dad! What's wrong? Somebody, help! Call 911! The house erupted into chaos. Everyone downstairs heard the screams and scrambled up the stairs. Marcus and Mason were the first to arrive. When they threw open the door, a horrific scene met their eyes. Kenneth was on the floor, clutching his chest, convulsing. His face was a deathly blue, and foam was bubbling from his lips. And Julia was kneeling beside him, clad only in a thin silk robe. Her hair was a mess, and her face was as white as a sheet. "Dad! Dad, what happened?" Marcus yelled, rushing to his father's side. "Someone call an ambulance, now!" Mason fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. Patrick and the other guests came up, freezing at the doorway, their faces masks of disbelief. The patriarch of the Kim family collapsed in his daughter-in-law's bedroom in a state that was impossible to explain. Every eye turned to Julia, looks of suspicion and judgment. All she could do was stammer and sob. I don't know. He just came into my room. And then, he just collapsed." In the midst of the chaos, I was the only one who remained calm. I stood in the corner, watching it all unfold. My hidden phone was still recording, its small red light blinking, capturing everything in undeniable clarity. The curtain had finally fallen on Kenneth and Julia's sick play. I just never knew the finale would be so bloody and tragic. The hospital became the second stage for our family's tragedy. Under the pale, fluorescent lights of the emergency room hallway, faces were etched with confusion and fear. Marcus, the eldest son, paced restlessly, muttering, "How could this happen? Why tonight?" My husband, Mason, sat slumped in a corner, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders trembling. And Julia. She was huddled in a waiting chair, the coat Marcus had thrown over her failing to hide her violent shivering. Her eyes darted around nervously, occasionally flicking toward me with a look that was a desperate mix of blame and pleading. I sat a short distance away, a silent observer. I didn't cry or show any concern. To them, I must have looked like a cold, heartless wife. But only I knew the terrifying power of my calm. I was a hunter, waiting for my prey to realize it was already caught in the trap. After 2 hellish hours, a doctor emerged from the ER. He took off his mask, his face etched with fatigue and gravity. "Family of Kenneth Kim? That's us," Marcus said, rushing forward. "Doctor, how is my father?" The doctor shook his head with a sigh. "We've done everything we can. He suffered a severe myocardial infarction. He's stable for now, but he's in critical condition in the ICU. You should prepare yourselves for the worst." He then looked from Marcus to Mason, lowering his voice. "Before he collapsed, did the patient by any chance take some kind of stimulant?" "His blood work shows a very high level of sildenafil. It's the active ingredient in most erectile dysfunction medications. We believe this, combined with a pre-existing heart condition, was the direct cause of the heart attack." The air in the hallway froze. "Erectile dysfunction medication?" Marcus repeated, his face turning ashen. "No, that's impossible. My father would never touch that kind of thing." "He's right," Mason added, looking up in disbelief. "My father is extremely cautious about his diet and any medication. There must be a mistake." Instinctively, everyone's gaze, including the doctor's, drifted to Julia. She flinched as if struck. "No, it wasn't me. I don't know anything," she cried, her voice cracking. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" But her panic denial only fueled their suspicion. Marcus whirled around, grabbing his wife's shoulders. "Julia, tell me the truth," he snarled. "What the hell happened in that room? Why was my father in there, and why does he have that crap in his system? I don't know, she sobbed. I was just resting, and he came in. He said he was tired and just wanted to sit for a minute, and then he collapsed. I swear, I don't know anything. Her weak excuses convinced no one. Marcus was losing his composure, shaking her violently. Lies. I don't believe you. You did something, didn't you? What did you give him? No, I didn't, she shrieked. Their argument grew louder, drawing stares from others in the waiting area. A nurse hurried over. Please, keep your voices down. This is a hospital. It was then that I slowly rose and walked toward them. I looked Julia directly in the eye, my gaze cold and sharp. In a voice that was quiet, but clear enough for everyone to hear, I said, Julia, I think I might know why that drug was in Dad's system. All three of them stared at me, stunned. Julia's eyes widened in a look of pure horror. Serena, what are you talking about? I ignored her, addressing Marcus and Mason instead. Marcus, Mason, I think it would be a good idea to go home and check the bowl of tonic Julia was drinking about an hour before Dad collapsed. If I remember correctly, she didn't finish it. My words were like a bucket of ice water thrown on their heated argument. Marcus paused, his brow furrowed in thought. Mason looked confused. The tonic? What does that have to do with anything? Only Julia understood my true intention. Her face went deathly pale. There's nothing in that tonic, she stammered. It's just a normal herbal drink. Is it? I said, a slight, mocking smile touching my lips. Then why do you look so scared? Is there something in that bowl you don't want anyone else to know about? I had successfully planted the seed of doubt. Now, they couldn't ignore the possibility. My play was moving into its climax. I didn't need to do much more. I had given the chessboard a gentle nudge, and now the pieces would topple on their own. I was curious to see how long Julia could keep up her act in the face of irrefutable evidence. My suggestion hung in the air, creating ripples of suspicion. Marcus, lost in a storm of anger and confusion, clung to my words like a lifeline. He let go of his wife and turned to me. Serena, what are you implying? That someone tampered with her tonic? I neither confirmed nor denied it, instead speaking in a vague, concerned tone. I don't know, Marcus. It's just that the timing is too much of a coincidence. Dad collapses the moment he enters her room, and the doctor says he has a strange drug in his system. I'm just worried that with all the guests and commotion at the house tonight, someone with ill intentions might have taken the opportunity to do something terrible. My words cleverly shifted the direction of suspicion, positioning me not as the instigator of a plot, but as a quick-witted family member concerned for everyone's safety. Even Mason nodded. My wife has a point. We did have a lot of people over. Only Julia saw through my act. She glared at me, her eyes spitting fire, but she was powerless. She couldn't object to them going home to check the bowl without admitting her own guilt. All she could do was offer a weak protest. That's ridiculous. Stop imagining things. But it was too late. Marcus had made up his mind. No, I'm going to check. I need to get to the bottom of this. He turned to me. Serena, you stay here with Dad. Mason and I will go right now. No, Julia cried, grabbing her husband's arm. I'll go with you. I can't stay here alone. She was terrified of leaving me alone with Kenneth, afraid of what I might say. Her panic only deepened Marcus's suspicion. He yanked his arm free. You're staying here, he said coldly. We don't know anything for sure yet. With that, he and Mason hurried out of the hospital. Julia watched them go, trembling uncontrollably. She turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. What did you do? You did this to frame me, didn't you? I simply shrugged, my face a mask of innocence. I have no idea what you're talking about, Julia. I just want to find the truth and clear our family's name. I knew I had already half won the game. When Marcus and Mason got home, they would find the tonic bowl on the dresser. When they had it tested, the truth would come out. Julia would never be able to deny that the stimulant was in her tonic. And then, all her excuses would be meaningless. As I sat there in the empty hospital corridor, facing the terrified shell of the woman who had made my life hell, I felt a sudden, profound exhaustion. I didn't feel happy or triumphant. I just felt empty. Memories of the past 6 years flooded my mind, the humiliation, the injustice. I remembered the day I gave birth to my second daughter, Emma, and not a single one of my in-laws came to visit. Only Mason showed up briefly, pressed some cash into my hand, and left, saying, "They're very upset. You need to understand." I lay in that hospital bed, holding my newborn daughter, and just wept. What had I done wrong? Why was I being treated so cruelly for just being a woman, a mother? I remembered the day my oldest, Lily, then just a little girl, innocently asked at the dinner table, "Mommy, how come Grandpa and Aunt Julia get to eat the steak, but we only have vegetables?" The question felt like a knife in my heart. All I could do was hug her and lie. Because my sweet girl likes vegetables more, remember? I remembered the times Julia deliberately framed me, breaking a priceless vase and blaming me, or claiming I stole a gold ring she had lost. Each time, Mason never defended me. He would just say, "Can't you just let it go? It's better for keeping the peace." His cowardice hurt me more than Julia's accusations. He made me an island in my own marriage. My patience had finally run out. I couldn't live in this web of lies and injustice anymore. I had to fight back, not just for me, but for my daughters. I had to show them that their mother was not weak, that she could stand up for herself and reclaim what was hers. The memories didn't weaken me. They hardened my resolve. The tears I'd swallowed and the bitterness I'd buried had become my strength. I looked at Julia, still pale and trembling across from me. She was pathetic, but she had brought this on herself. A short while later, my phone rang. It was Mason. His voice was shaking on the other end. "Serena, you were right. There was something in Julia's tonic. Some kind of pill residue." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my own voice steady. "Really? Did you send it for testing?" "No, but I tasted a little bit of it. It was strange. Not like a normal herbal drink." "Serena, who would do this? Who is trying to hurt our family?" I paused for a moment before speaking slowly. "Don't jump to conclusions, Mason. Sometimes, the person we think is the victim might actually be the perpetrator." My words planted an even bigger seed of doubt in his mind. I knew, from that moment, that his blind faith in his perfect sister-in-law was beginning to crack, and that was exactly what I wanted. The play wasn't over. The most interesting part was yet to come. When the lab results were announced, and when the video I recorded was revealed, that's when everything would truly explode. My husband's phone call ended in a heavy silence. I knew my words had shaken him. He was no longer blindly defending Julia. He was thinking, doubting. It was the first crack in the fortress of lies she had built. About an hour later, Marcus and Mason returned to the hospital. The bewildered look was gone from their faces, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated rage and disillusionment. Marcus marched straight to Julia, and without a word, slapped her hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the quiet hallway. "You filthy liar," Marcus seethed, his eyes bloodshot, his hands clenched into fists. Julia crumpled to the floor, clutching her reddening cheek, staring up at her husband in shock. "What are you talking about? What did I do? You still don't know what you did?" Marcus snarled, pulling out his phone. The screen displayed a series of text messages. "What is this? Explain this to me, now." I glanced over. They were explicit messages between Julia and a man saved as Daddy K. "I miss you so much. Can't wait for tonight. Marcus is gone. I'll drink that tonic you got me. I even added a little something extra to it. Tonight will be a night you'll never forget." Julia's face went from white to a sickly shade of blue. That's not mine. Someone is framing me." "Framing you?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "It's your phone, Julia. A second phone you kept hidden under your pillow. Are you still going to deny it? For years you've been deceiving me, this entire family, pretending you couldn't have children while secretly taking birth control, acting like a saint while cheating behind my back. And tonight you were going to use a stimulant to fool around with your lover in my house on my mother's Memorial Day. You're worse than an animal." My husband, Mason, stood beside him, his face a mask of disgust. "Julia, I am so disappointed. To think you could be that kind of person. You made a fool of my brother, of our entire family. You are the one who almost killed our father." As it turned out, when they went home, they had found not only the tainted tonic, but also Julia's burner phone hidden under her pillow. It wasn't password protected. Inside was all the evidence of her sordid secrets. My plan had succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't even need to show them my video. The truth had revealed itself in the most perfect way possible. Julia had no more excuses. She collapsed on the floor, wailing, "I'm sorry, Marcus, I'm so sorry. Please, just give me one more chance. I'll never do it again." "A chance?" Marcus looked down at her, his eyes like chips of ice. "You think I could ever forgive you? You've destroyed everything. My honor, my family, my love. We're done." He turned to my husband. "Mason, call a lawyer. I'm divorcing this woman, and I'm going to make sure she pays for every single thing she's done." Their confrontation drew the attention of everyone in the hallway. They stared with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. The esteemed Kim family, who had always prided themselves on their decorum and legacy, was now airing its dirtiest laundry for the world to see. I stood in the corner, watching it all. I saw Julia crying for forgiveness, Marcus drowning in agony, and my husband standing helplessly by. I didn't feel joy or triumph, just a strange, hollow emptiness. My revenge was a success, but the cost was immense. A family was shattered, a man lay fighting for his life, and innocent children would be hurt. But then I thought, if I hadn't done this, I would have continued to live in injustice, and my daughters would have grown up being looked down upon. And Julia would have continued to deceive everyone, perhaps committing even more terrible sins. This was a painful ending, but a necessary one. It was like a radical surgery to remove a malignant tumor that was destroying the entire body. Just then, the same doctor came out again. He looked at our family and cleared his throat. "Mr. Kim has regained consciousness. However, there's something else you need to know. Based on his blood work, the text messages you've provided, and his own testimony, we believe this may not have been a simple accident. The evidence suggests intentional harm, possibly even attempted murder. We have reported this to the police. Officers will be arriving shortly to take your statements." The doctor's words were a second bombshell. "The police?" Julia looked up, all the color drained from her face. She had never dreamed her actions would lead not just to divorce, but to a criminal investigation. My game was coming to an end, but I had never imagined its conclusion would be decided not by me, but by the law. And I had a feeling the punishment Julia was about to face would be far more severe than anything I had ever envisioned. The arrival of the police escalated the family tragedy to its peak. 2 uniformed officers entered the tense hospital corridor, and the air grew even heavier. They took us all, Marcus, Mason, Julia, and me, to separate rooms for questioning. Under the harsh glare of the interrogation room lights, all lies were stripped bare. Faced with the sharp questions and undeniable evidence, Julia finally broke down and confessed everything. Her lover was not Patrick, but Kenneth, her father-in-law. Their incestuous relationship had been going on for nearly 2 years. Kenneth had promised her a life of wealth and luxury, far beyond what Marcus could provide. Her plan was to avoid having a child with Marcus, bleed the family dry, and eventually run away with the patriarch. Regarding the events of that night, she admitted to spiking the tonic with the stimulant, intending to have a memorable night with Kenneth. She claimed that his collapse was an unforeseen accident and that she never intended to harm him, but there was a fatal flaw in her testimony. Kenneth, having regained consciousness, told the police a far more shocking story. He hadn't mistaken the room. He had known about Julia's affair with Patrick for some time and had confronted her. But instead of being remorseful, Julia had blackmailed him, threatening to expose his own financial misdeeds and ruin the family's reputation if he said a word. On the night of the party, he had decided to confront her one last time. When he entered her room, she had calmly offered him the tonic, saying, "Dad, drink this. It will give you strength, and then we can talk." Suspecting nothing, he drank it, and the tragedy unfolded. He had lied about the affair being with him to protect what little was left of his family's name, painting her as a manipulative adulteress trying to kill him to keep him quiet. It was a web of lies on top of lies. The evidence from Julia's burner phone, however, pointed directly to Kenneth. The police investigation unraveled the whole sordid affair. Julia's actions were reclassified from accidental harm to a premeditated act of attempted murder, born of a toxic, incestuous relationship. Faced with the truth, Julia completely fell apart. She was arrested and taken into custody. The day she was led away in handcuffs, the family stood in stunned silence. Marcus, who had once adored his wife, could only stare at her retreating back with empty eyes. He had lost everything: his love, his trust, his honor. My husband, Mason, couldn't look me in the eye. He knew that if it hadn't been for his cowardice, his silence, things might never have reached this point. And I stood in the corner, watching it all, feeling only a profound sense of exhaustion. After Julia's arrest, a funereal gloom settled over the Kim estate. Kenneth survived, but his health was shattered. He was left partially paralyzed and completely dependent on others. The family company went into a death spiral. Patrick, learning of the scandal, pulled all his investments, and the company faced bankruptcy. Marcus sank into a deep depression, losing all will to work and spending his days drinking in his room. The weight of the entire family now rested on Mason's shoulders. He had to care for his invalid father, try to salvage the collapsing company, and face the scorn of the world. He grew gaunt, aging 10 years in a matter of months. Whenever he saw me, his eyes were filled with regret and self-loathing. One evening he came to me. Without a word, he knelt before me. "Serena, I'm so sorry," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. "It's all my fault. If I hadn't been such a coward, if I had just protected you, none of this would have happened. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked down at the broken man at my feet. The man I had once loved with all my heart. I thought I could never forgive him, but seeing him so utterly defeated, I felt more pity than hatred. I helped him to his feet. "Get up, Mason. It's all in the past. Nothing we say can change it now. I don't hate you. I just hope you can take care of what's left of your family." I knew there was nothing left for us to salvage. My love for him had died long ago, buried under years of humiliation. All I wanted now was a peaceful life with my 2 daughters. "I want a divorce," I said. Not out of hatred, but as a release for both of us. Our lives were heading in different directions, and the ghosts of the past would likely haunt his family forever. He wasn't surprised. He simply nodded, his eyes hollow. "I respect your decision. You and the girls, you deserve better." Our divorce was quick and quiet. There were no arguments, no fights over assets. He agreed to give me full custody of Lily and Emma. I asked for nothing from the Kim family. I just wanted to take my children and start a new life, untangled from the family that had caused me so much pain. The day I packed our bags and left, a heavy rain was falling. The downpour seemed to be trying to wash away the sorrowful memories of the past 6 years. As I walked out the door with my daughters, only Mason stood there, watching us go in silence. "Mommy, where are we going?" Lily asked, clutching my coat. I knelt and hugged her, forcing a smile. "We're going to our new home, sweetie, a place just for the 3 of us." "What about Daddy? Isn't he coming?" I didn't know how to answer. I just held her tighter. "Daddy is very busy. He'll come visit you when he can." Holding my daughter's hands, I walked out the gate without looking back. Behind me was a shattered family, paying the price for their sins. Ahead of me was an uncertain future, but I wasn't afraid. As long as I had my daughters, I could do anything. I found a small apartment in the city. It wasn't large, but it was cozy and clean, our new sanctuary. I found a job as an accountant at an international firm. The salary wasn't extravagant, but it was enough for the 3 of us to live comfortably. Life wasn't easy. I juggled work and raising 2 children alone. Some days I was exhausted. But seeing my daughters' smiles washed away all my fatigue. They were my reason for everything. They matured quickly, helping around the house and never complaining. Slowly, our lives found a new rhythm. I made new friends, joined a yoga class and a book club. I was no longer the daughter-in-law of the Kim family or Mason's wife. I was Serena, an independent, strong, and free woman. Mason called sometimes to ask about the girls and always sent child support on time. He told me the family company had finally declared bankruptcy. Marcus was still struggling with alcoholism. They had to sell the large estate to pay off debts and cover Kenneth's medical bills. He and Marcus were now living in a small rental apartment. He said he was filled with regret, that if he could turn back time, he would do everything differently. I listened quietly, feeling neither pain nor satisfaction, just a strange sense of peace. The past was behind me. One weekend afternoon, while walking in the park with my daughters, I ran into an old friend from college. It was Nathan, a kind man who had once had a crush on me. He bought the girls ice cream, and we talked for a long time. He had just returned to the States after working abroad, and was still single. He said he had never forgotten me. I just smiled. I felt like life was opening a new door for me. I didn't know what lay behind it, but I was ready to step through. I had weathered the fiercest storm of my life. I deserved to enjoy the sunshine. Life isn't a fairy tale, but after every storm, the sky clears. And I believed that somewhere down the road, happiness was waiting for me. My chance meeting with Nathan in the park was a turning point. At first, he was just an old friend, but over time, his genuine warmth and kindness began to melt the ice around my heart. Nathan was nothing like Mason. He didn't have a flashy presence or smooth words, but he had a sincere heart and strong shoulders. He listened to me. He played with my daughters. He helped them with their homework. Lily and Emma adored him, calling him Uncle Nathan. Seeing them laugh so freely with him, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. It felt like family. Still, I hesitated. The scars from my broken marriage hadn't fully healed. I was afraid of being hurt again. After an evening out, Nathan looked me in the eyes and said, "Serena, I know how much you've been through, but I need you to know this. I love you. Not out of pity, but because you are a strong, wonderful person. I love your daughters, and I want to build a life with all of you. Please, give me a chance to be the shelter for your new family." Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in years, I felt loved and respected. I nodded. Our wedding was small and warm, attended by our closest friends. My daughters, dressed as princesses, were my maids of honor. We moved into a larger house with a small, beautiful garden. Nathan was a wonderful husband and a fantastic father. He cherished us, and I finally felt safe. One day, I heard that Julia had been released on parole for good behavior. She had served 4 years. After her release, she never returned, moving far away to start a new life. No one knew where she was. Marcus, I learned, had finally pulled himself out of his despair. He went through rehab and found a new job. He lived a quiet, solitary life. As for my ex-in-laws, their downfall was complete. Kenneth passed away after a long illness. Mason, I heard, was working as a day laborer to make ends meet, living alone, still consumed by guilt. The news no longer stirred any emotion in me. The hatred had faded with time. Years passed. My daughters grew up and started their own lives. One became a doctor, the other a teacher. Nathan and I grew old together, our love deepening like the roots of an old tree. One afternoon, a letter with no return address arrived. The handwriting was shaky, but I recognized it immediately. It was from Julia. "Serena, I know I have no right to write to you, no right to ask for forgiveness. I spent my years in prison and the rest of my life in solitude, paying for my sins. Life has taught me what truly matters, not money or status, but love and forgiveness. I heard about what you did for Mason at the end. Thank you for showing me what compassion looks like. I don't dare ask you to forgive me. I just want to say I am sorry. For everything. I know you are happy. You deserve it. Live well. Goodbye." Julia, I folded the letter and placed it in a wooden box. It would be a lesson for me, for my children, that hatred only breeds pain, but love and forgiveness can heal all wounds. More years went by. I was a grandmother now, my hair white. My granddaughter asked me one day, "Grandma, what kind of woman should I be when I grow up?" I smiled and stroked her hair. "My dear, be a woman who is strong, independent, and has a warm heart. Learn to love yourself, and never let anyone trample on your worth. Forgive the mistakes of others, but never forget the lessons life teaches you." And most importantly, live a life that makes you happy, a life with no regrets." She nodded, her eyes bright and clear. Looking at her, I knew she would. My life has been a long journey, with sunshine, rain, and storms. But after all of it, I learned to face every hardship with a smile. I learned how to love and be loved. I found my true happiness, not in some distant place, but right here, in this little house, with the people I love. And that, I know, is the most perfect ending of all.